Moral Relativism and Value-Based Morality by Aaryan Harshith, June 6th, 2021. We believe morality is dualistic, and we believe it's an obvious thing. Something can either be good or bad, right or wrong, left or right, with no room for nuance. Bzzzt. Try again. Instead, morality is relative. Not only can the definitions of good and bad change from person to person, but two people can see exactly the same thing, and one person could see it as a crime, while another would see it as their fundamental right. For example, just look at how polarized certain topics like abortion or freedom of speech actually are. And of course, I'm probably going to get a lot of heat for even mentioning those in this episode, but to tell the truth, both sides of the argument are right and wrong at the same time. Because moral relativism claims that no one knows the answer to what's inherently right or wrong, it lets us argue both for and against literally anything. If moral relativism was a person, it'd be that one kid in school that probably knows the answer but always says, I don't know, like a Neanderthal when the teacher asks them a question. That's not exactly the most useful feature when you want to make decisions and get a half decent society going. So, unless we have an alternative to that, we'd probably all just become anarchists or hippies. Or worse, anarchist hippies. What gives humans the natural inclination to think something's good or bad in the first place? Now, a couple of factors might actually seem like pretty reasonable answers. If you said tradition or culture or anything along those lines, that's partly it, but it's not everything. Now, sure, if you look at people across the same country who've mostly been fed the same norms and dogma, you'll find that they have a lot in common. But they're still different amongst themselves. That's a really important feature, and there's a reason for that. Even if you deleted all those weird PSAs on TV that, told you to look both ways before crossing the street, chances are you would still intrinsically have a sense of what's good or bad. Given, it'd be a pretty whack sense of good or bad, but you'd have a sense of good or bad nonetheless. In most cases, our minds automatically handle morality, kind of like a background process on your computer. And hopefully, you might have guessed this already, our values and priorities are the foundation of that background process. If two people had exactly the same values and priorities, they'd have the same sense of morality too, assuming we could magically control every other variable involved. But as it turns out, that's just wrong. We've got 7 billion people on the planet, and no two of them have values or ideals that even closely match. And as it also turns out, getting rid of 6,999,999,999 people isn't the best idea. As long as there's more than one perspective in a situation, it gets logically impossible to figure out which one's right. That's the issue. Since we live in a mostly empirical society that's based on observations and tests, and true morality isn't provable, it might as well not exist. But that bug in morality still exists, and we need to patch it. And the question is how? A common answer would be getting as close to real morality as humanly possible. And the insight here is that maybe, just maybe, if we focus on whether something's useful or not, that could get really close to approximating what's good or bad. I mean, the idea definitely sounds like a bunch of ancient Greek people thought about this around a table. So at this point, you know what? Let's just double check their work. Imagine you wake up one night in a cold sweat, or to be more accurate, a warm sweat. Someone decided that it would just be an awesome idea to throw their used cigarette into your yard. And now your house is on fire and your sleep cycle's ruined. Hard to say that's useful. So, does that make the smoker's actions bad? Well, trick question. You still can't say, can you? Using this mental model, we're back exactly where we began. For you, having a well cooked house isn't useful at all. But at the same time, it was definitely more than convenient for that person with a cigarette. And to a degree, it was even radically efficient littering. Again, the exact same thing can mean positive useful points for one person and negative useful points for another. Unfortunately, that still makes things really, really gross and subjective. Any solutions in mind? Well, maybe think about something that could turn all this morality into something objective and almost scientific. There's one missing piece. Don't overthink this. I'll wait. Done? Well, the short answer has to do with purpose. Usefulness and non usefulness is a promising start, but there's more to it than that. The only way we can definitively say if something's useful or not is by tying it to a value. It's by making it relative to a certain goal. For example, if you value financial stability, then is burning down your life's biggest purchase a useful thing to do? Probably not. But if you value getting a big fat check from your insurance company, maybe it is. That aside, though, I still don't get why anyone would burn their house just to get repaid by an insurance company to build it again. Anyways, this actually makes a bit of sense now. Different things can have different uses depending on what goal they're trying to pursue. Still, though, this is just a way of thinking that can let us digest moral relativism better. Because no matter how we slice it, the uncertainty of moral relativism still can't reach zero. It can only approach it. And in the end, that ultimate question, which is what we value, is up to us. That's the whole reason moral relativism exists in the first place. The good thing is, values are infinitely more agreeable than just being stuck at what's right or what's wrong. And that's impossible to justify in the first place. Again, these aren't technically true morals, but in that case, nothing is true. It doesn't matter what you question, things eventually won't make sense anymore if you just keep asking questions. We've got to be practical at some point, and values seem to be a good place to draw the line. For example, humans want certain things out of life, and it's usually common between humans in broad strokes. The right values can maximize that. Humans want the highest quality of life possible. We want happiness and freedom. We want money and time. If the last decision you had to make in your life was to benefit the few or the many, I have a feeling you'd know what to choose. It's pretty well agreed upon that 1 million well fed and happy people, like in a democracy, is better than one very well fed, happy person, like in North Korea. That's your challenge for now. Figure out what you value. Write it down and remind yourself that if you don't own your values in life, you'll eventually have someone else's values forced down your throat. And if that happens, you don't own your life either. So get started early and you'll be thankful. Stay tuned for next episode of the On My Own podcast, where I'll be going deeper into, well, it's a mystery for now, even to me. Until then, stay curious, and as always, good night.